Okay, are the kids gone? Okay, so again, hi, Otaku Mom. This is the Geekery Barn, and I want to. This is the second review for us, and so as you can see, there is a full warning right on here. Spoiler review. I am going to talk about spoilers, so this one is going to take a while. This is going to take longer than the spoiler free one, because the spoiler free review, I was having a hard time thinking about what I could exactly talk about in it that would not be a spoiler, because I felt like everything I wanted to discuss would be spoiling the film. So this is a spoiler review. So if you want to go into the movie blind, don't watch this video, because I am going to be talking about plot points in this film. I am going to be talking about what I think about the themes and other things about this film, and that just struck me as I was watching it. And I highly encourage you to go watch this film. As like I said, this film I think will be discussed in film schools after in years to come, just because of Jordon Peele's direction on this film. He does a lot of things with how he uses camera, with how he uses the music, with how he uses the atmosphere of the film, that honestly it's hard for me to describe in something that isn't spoiler free. So that's why this is what we're going to discuss in the spoiler review. So the first thing that struck me is his use of music. Now, first of all is that there's a scene in the film. There is a scene in the scene of the film where they have these friends that are played by Elizabeth Moss and Tim Heidecker. These white rich friends who have this is an expensive beach house. They're supposed to be leaving the next morning, and you find out that it's not only this family that's being attacked, that the Lupita Nyong'o and Winston Duke's family in the movie is being attacked. It's all over the country. It's not just them. So, and you get this sense when they cut to Elizabeth Moss and Tim Heidecker, who are playing Kitty and Josh in the film, and they cut to them and in the film, and this is going to be their last night at the beach house, and so they're in their house, and they have this device that is a like sort of a parody to like Alexa. It's one of those like home assistants that they call I think Octavia or something like that. And in the film, he uses the device is used in the scene. The device is used a few times to turn on the lights, play the music, or whatever. So at one point he plays. At one point he tells this thing to play a Beach Boys song. So he plays the Beach Boys song. It gets turned down, and I think if I remember, it's Good Vibrations. It's playing in the background, and then all of a sudden they get attacked by their doppelgangers. And unlike the Wilsons, the other family, they get attacked right away. So they're getting attacked to the tune of Good Vibrations. And the wife tries to call the police, tries to get the sister to call the police, and the thing mishears her and it starts playing "Fuck the Police," so by NWA, and it's funny but kind of creepy at the same time, because they're getting attacked, and the personal assistant is just playing random music that's just doesn't seem to fit the scene, but it fits it really well. Because the song is now playing as the other family approaches the house to try to rescue him, and just his use of music kind of reminded me of how Guardians of the Galaxy used music, and that And that's put in scenes that you wouldn't think it would be put in, but it's used very effectively. Think of the opening scene in Guardians where, in the first Guardians film, where Peter Quill is on a planet and he puts on his headphones, he puts on his Walkman, and it starts playing "Come and Get Your Love" while he's scavenging this planet. And the same thing here. They tell it to play the music, and it just ends up becoming kind of this sort of pseudo-ironic soundtrack as they're getting killed. It switches from "Good Vibrations" to "Fuck the Police." So it's become this. So the use of music in the film, I thought was great. I thought it was brilliant as to how it was used in the film. And Jordan Peele has a really good ear for where he could put music in certain scenes, and a lot of the music in it I wouldn't consider like overly atmospheric as far as creepy as far as it's concerned, but it sets the mood, and it and it plays really well for what's needed in the scene. So yeah, it is. It does. I should say it isn't creepy. It is creepy in a way, but it doesn't. But it does it in a way that's not like totally over your head, bonging you on the head, and just obvious. You know, it's there, and it uses the music very, very well in the film. Another thing is the camera work used in the film. He does a really good job of using music in a way so that to bring that atmosphere, and also to give us kind of that dread that we should be feeling throughout the film. Okay. Now in the film. There's a scene where the daughter, again played by Shahadi Wright Joseph, is running away from her doppelganger, and of course the doppelganger is kind of taunting her and teasing her, and until she finally catches up with her. So he uses the camera in a way so that you kind of feel that dread as the doppelganger suddenly disappears. And you kind of go under the car, and all of a sudden the doppelganger shows up on top of the car, and it's not a jump scare. I mean, it's like she's going to show up. She's going to show up again eventually. So it's not a jump. It's not a jump scare. It's not meant to be a jump scare. But that's what kind of makes it more effective, is that it's not a jump scare. She's there. But he does a very good job of revealing her without turning it into a jump scare, and which is one of the things. Like I said, one of the things I liked about this film is that there's only one real jump scare in the film, and that's like halfway through the film where they're about to leave the house of their rich friends after they find him dead. They think they've killed all the doppelgangers, all their rich friends' doppelgangers. And they start to leave the house and realize they don't have the car keys. So Adelaide goes back into the house. Lupita Nyong'o's character, Adelaide, goes back into the house, and and she goes to go back to get the keys, and she realizes that one of the doppelgangers, one of the twins, is not dead. So she kills her. And so she kills her, and so that's the only real jump scare in the film. Is that scene where the twin suddenly comes out, but it's used in a very effective way. The movie doesn't rely completely on jump scares throughout the entire film. It's used in a way that is very appropriate and it's very well done as to how they did it. Now, as far as the plot goes, again, a lot of twists and turns in this because you think it's just the family that's being affected, and then they leave, but then they're able to leave their house, so they try to go to their rich friends, and they find out, and then that's when they realize that it's all over the country because they look on the TV and they look on the TV and they realize it's going on all over the country, and you realize that a lot of this is coming from the the Adelaide doppelganger, who has been the leader of this. And she's been leading it, and you realize a lot of it is coming from that. And certain things that were set up start to click after a bit, such as early in the film, they showed a TV from like the 1980s, showing some old commercials or whatever, and one of them is for the Hands Across America, thing that was done back in the 80s to bring attention to homelessness or whatever, and then by the end of the film, they're showing this line of all of these doppelgangers kind of going across the country. And you realize that's why they were talking about Hands Across America, is this ends up playing a part later in the film because of the character having this Hands Across America t-shirt, she gets the idea to do this very deadly Hands Across America thing with her, with these creatures, to bring attention to them being there. And the way he sets things up and does the payoff afterwards is just great. He does it a really effective way. He does it really effectively throughout this film, and so so pretty much almost anything that's set up is paid off at some point. Even the beginning scenes with Adelaide, the character of Adelaide, coming across this girl she describes as looking just like her. And then playing into the whole idea of how she was able to get away with this and how she was able to set it up. And of course, as it plays along, as you get to the very end, you realize that the Adelaide we've been following the whole time. And again, remember, this is a spoiler review, so I can talk about this. So you realize at the very end the twist is that the person who actually escaped that funhouse was not the real Adelaide. It was her doppelganger, and we've been following her doppelganger the entire time. Okay. And it was the real Adelaide who was actually the one setting up this whole thing, because the others saw her as the quote-unquote savior. So she set this whole thing up, and when you get into and when you make that realization, I mean, it's not like, if you've watched enough horror movies, it shouldn't be a real complete surprise that this is what's going on. But at the same time, it's set up very well, because there are aspects of the film where you're not sure if that's what's going on exactly. But I think one of the big hints also in that this is what's actually going on is the fact that out of those characters, which are called the tethered, out of the doppelgangers, which are their name is actually the tethered in here, Um, out of the tethered, she was the only one that was not speaking like guttural noises for the most part. Because because all the tethered, they speak in these like guttural voices. They don't really speak. That's how they communicate. Like kind of like zombies. But she's the only one that can speak. So that would be their. And in the beginning, they mentioned how suddenly Adelaide was shocked enough that she didn't have a voice. Well, she didn't have a voice because she was actually a tethered. So, so that plays. So Peele's setup and payoff on the script worked for the most part. I liked a lot of it. There are a couple of things I think that are open to interpretation. Even Peele has said this in interviews, that there are things in the movie that are very much open to interpretation on this film, and can play into what you interpret it as. I mean, I've seen that his main theme on doing this film was, with a country so divided, we are our own worst enemy. And this kind of takes that literally, in that that the characters are literally fighting against themselves. So I could see that theme, but also there's also kind of a theme of who are we really? Because a lot of the story is Adelaide trying to figure out who she actually is. When you look back at it, because she's starting to have memories coming back from when she was a kid. They have a scene with her in a therapy room where her parents are discussing what had happened to her at that fun house. Although they didn't know that she went to the fun house, they just found her, and all of a sudden she couldn't talk. And flashbacks to her dancing and all this, and her trying to figure out what's going on, and her trying to figure out it's because it's like she lost her memory of her being a tethered, and she could see that, and the one scene when she kills the wraith in the house, her son happens to come in at that point and watches her, and it's kind of watching her in terror. And it's like, when you think back, and this is one of those things like The Sixth Sense, you kind of have to think back. Look back, and it becomes very, very obvious as to who she actually is. Because when she's fighting, Adelaide is making those guttural sounds, kind of hinting at the fact that she's actually a tethered herself. And doesn't realize it. Doesn't remember being a tethered. So yeah, this is one of those things. I'm gonna have to watch this movie again to be able to nitpick at all the little things that are in it and go even further into it. I've heard one review say that and I would have to agree with them. In particular, the very first scene of the film is one that should be analyzed. Because it's them in a carnival, and it sets it up for her going into the house, going into the fun house, and just the camera shots that are used and how it's set up and all this. And there are actually, as I'm thinking about it, there are actually large chunks of this film that have like absolutely no dialogue, which really puts into, really tells you the power of this film. Because the tethered can't speak, and the other characters know they can't really speak to them per se. They have to do it through motions. And actually, it's Jason who figures out that they will copy you. At least in his case, at least in the case with his doppelganger, is that he copies him, and so he's able to get him to walk backwards into a fire because of it. And some people were complaining. I think some people were like confused about the scene. It's like, how did he have the power to do that? And my observation, I was watching the film, is he figured it out when he was in the closet with him. and the guy was and his doppelganger had the fire. And he figured that his doppelganger would easily try to copy him. So that's why. So anyway, if you're watching this and you haven't seen this film yet, go watch the film. Don't hear me drag on about it. Go see the film. It's a really good film. I mean, it's not absolutely perfect, but it's a good film. It's a good film, and I will probably buy this at some point and analyze it. So, because this film has a lot of things to unwrap. So, for now, this is Talking Mom at the Geekery Barn, and I'll see you on the next film review or news thing or whatever that happens to come up. Okay, bye.